Hello there, this is Yana Smakula for Spellbinders Creative Arts, and thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'll show you how to create a set of elegant cards featuring stamping, heat embossing, and watercoloring, using stamps from the Feather Stamp and Die set from the Earth, Air, Water collection by Stephanie Lowe. Here's the stamp set I'll be using today. It's a beautiful feather with lots of details that is great for coloring. I also have a sheet of Arches hot press watercolor paper cut to 4 and 5 1/4 inches and a black ink pad. The reason I'm using watercolor paper here is because I want to do some quick watercoloring to color this image, and I find this paper to be simply the best. I'm using hot press version and not cold press, as hot press paper is very smooth and it's perfect for stamping. I'm using Hero Art's Intense Black ink pad as it's waterproof and my image outline is not going to bleed when I'll be adding water. I want to stamp a pattern onto my paper using the feather stamp, and in order to do that, I'm going to stamp feathers repeatedly, alternating the way each row of feathers is facing. So one row will be facing up and the next one will be facing down. You can stamp all of these facing one direction, but I prefer to alternate them for some added variety on my background. And here's what my pattern looks like when stamped. I love the way this turned out and I can't wait to color this. But before I can do that, I want to show you a different way you can use this stamp. I know not everybody likes to color, and remembering myself when I didn't like to color, I used to stay away from images that were designed to be colored as I simply didn't know what to do with them. Well, you can still use images like that and create beautiful projects. Here I have a sheet of navy blue cardstock from my color cardstock. It's cut to about 1/8 of an inch smaller than 5 by 7 inches. And I'm going to stamp the same pattern onto this paper, but I'm going to heat emboss it in gold. So I'm using Versamark clear ink. This is sticky ink. It's perfect for heat embossing. I've already treated my paper with an anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp the same pattern as I just stamped onto my watercolor paper onto this navy cardstock. I'm working in sections here, so I'm stamping a few feathers and adding gold embossing powder. This is detailed gold embossing powder from Spellbinders. Now I'm not heat setting my section, I'm simply adding the powder. You don't have to do this, you can stamp the entire pattern first and then add embossing powder in the end. But if your embossing ink pad is a little bit on the dry side, I find it's best to work in smaller sections. Once I have my entire panel covered with embossing powder, I'm going to preheat my heat gun and will melt the powder to create beautiful feather gold embossed paper. I just love the look of gold on dark blue. It is timeless and it never goes out of style. We also have our watercolor paper to complete, and I'm going to use Distress inks. I have peacock feathers here and a water brush, and I'm first going to add a light wash of color, just so that I have some color in the background and just so this panel isn't all white. You can use any other watercolor medium you prefer. I simply like the colors and the Distress palette, so this is why I'm using Distress inks today. So next I'm using my heat tool to dry the panel. You can let it air dry, but I'm simply being impatient here, and once it's dry, I'm going to move on to coloring sections of each feather. I'm not going to do detail coloring here, I just want to add color here and there to help the feathers stand out. These feathers have flowers and beautiful leaves designed into them, so I'm trying to color those to help them pop. I'm also using another Distress ink color, this is Evergreen Bough, to add a different shade of green-blue. Coloring takes quite a bit of time, but I find it to be very therapeutic, so I never mind extra coloring time. Let's go ahead and finish our cards. I'm going to adhere my heat embossed panel onto a 5 by 7 inch navy note card. I'm also adding some gold thread across the card. Since my fold is at the top, this is a top folding note card, I need to poke a hole to be able to thread my twine through. So I'm using my Spellbinders tool-in-one and my Spellbinders mat and grid lines and trying to figure out where the center is and going to go ahead and poke the hole. So I'm going to thread the twine and tie it into 2 knots and trim the ends. To add a bow, I'm going to tie it separately and will later adhere it onto the card using glue. It's easier for me to tie it separately rather than trying to tie a perfect bow right there on the project. I also foam mounted a sentiment on top of my panel. This one reads, "Truly, madly, deeply," and I heat embossed it using the same gold embossing powder onto same navy cardstock and die cut into a circle using Spellbinders circle die. I used black foam adhesive here to make sure it won't be visible from the sides of my card. I also want to add some heat embossing to my watercolor panel. I'm going to use my ink pad to wrap the edges of the panel and will add a generous amount of gold embossing powder. This will create the illusion that the panel is dipped in gold paint. I just love this look. I'm going to heat set it using my heat tool and will go ahead and adhere it onto an A2 top folding card base made out of navy cardstock. I created 4 cards in total using this stamp set and techniques I shared in my video. There's lots more you can do with this stamp set and countless card designs you can make. I created a set of love cards, but this design works great for wedding invitations, thank you projects, and so much more. Thank you so much for watching this video. Here's a closer look at these projects featuring Spellbinders, Feather, Stamp, and Die set from Stephanie Lowe. If you're looking for a list of supplies to create these projects, you can find them in the video description below the video and also on my blog. On the screen, you're seeing a few additional videos from Spellbinders featuring their stamps and dies. Be sure to check them out for more inspiration. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye!